Hey, my name's ShawNshawN. I sell art on ShawNshawN.co and specials on eBay. Today we're going to react to Lena Danya. So let's go check it out, guys. We'll get this straightened out.
Timelapse, I'm painting a portrait that also involves realistic water. I've created many paintings of water over the years, but this is the largest I've ever attempted, and I started it in March 2018.
So she has this really great technique, obviously realism, really soft voice, so very soothing to hear her voice. I'm kind of pausing it now because she has music, so I don't want to be copyright struck. He has a time lapse here. And so she's including kind of the full version, a little bit starting how she paints and then a time lapse. I think she does paid videos on the full version. So she's kind of, just time lapsing for the audience for free and then, paying for the full version. Let me turn that sound back on.
I don't know why, but it sat in my studio facing a wall for over a year. And finally, in the summer of 2019, I came back to it with a newfound interest and motivation.
So this painting is really interesting in the sense that she paused and stopped. She paused and stopped a couple of times. Like she started for a year and then she stopped and then she put it in her closet and then she brought it out. And so there's a lot of drama and tension to this painting in this sense. Some artists fall into that. It's kind of surprising that an accomplished artist like Lena would fall into that, but I've had paintings that don't feel right, so sometimes I put them aside. I never get back to them or something, but usually I just push through, and then if I don't like it, I'm like, whatever, just put it up in the closet. She's a perfectionist, so for her it's not satisfying, and I think that's good if you kind of that style of work. You want to kind of push through and just have all your work look good, right? And we can really see here how she's, doing those waves, slowly filling them in. Obviously a very big challenge. I've done waves, but I just kind of simulate the waves. I don't really paint straight from the photo. She's painting straight from a photo, so she's getting exact details in the waves. Obviously, let me pause that. She has music in there. But anyway, she paints straight from the photo, so she's painting all the subtle details in the wave, which turns out super badass in the end. But yeah, let's fast forward to the end here and then see kind of where it's at. She has lots of ads on her work too, but so you can see the waves coming through together. So you can see it's really great work. Let's get into one of her other videos.
Hi everyone! I finally decided to make this video for anyone who wants to try oil painting and they have no idea what to do with it. This video is meant to just be the basics, just to get you started, to give you an idea. Today we're going to get into what oil paint is, like what it's made out of, how it works, how to...
So this is really cool. She gets into really detailed aspects of kind of the materials that go into oil paint from an artist's perspective, and how to use those materials. So we'll just kind of skip forward through this.
To use it, we're going to talk about medium, Gamsol, which is 100% pure odorless mineral spirits. It's also the standard for a lot of art schools and classroom settings because it's the safest. You'll also need some kind of container to hold your solvents and mediums.
So she uses Gamsol, which is popular with oil painters. I've only used really turpentine and linseed oil, which are really basic. I didn't do oil painting for a long time, so Gamsol I think is a better material. And she's kind of, walks you through how oil paints are basically healthy. They're built of oil, and you might use turpentine. That's a very dirty chemical to use for cleaning your brushes, but I think she uses some other process to clean the brushes.
Black will work just fine. Yellow, a bright yellow like cadmium yellow light, lemon yellow, or Hansa yellow light, all of these will work. Yellow ochre, which is a dark earthy yellow, burnt sienna, raw umber, alizarin crimson, cadmium red, ultramarine blue, and sap green. If you want to go a step further, you can add cerulean blue hue, phthalo blue, emerald, or viridian green. Once you get some practice and you decide you want to keep oil painting, you can continue to grow your collection to other colors.
So she runs through the basic colors to get started, which I would highly recommend as well. It's better to learn from your basic, your red, yellow, green, blue, purple. I usually mix my purple. I don't get diaxan purple, but if you learn those basic colors and try to match to, say, those paint cars that you get at the Home Depot when they're buying house paint, you just get a set of those 20, 30 of those, pick them up every weekend, a couple, and then try to match that color. You can learn how to use that base set, and then later you can expand to a larger set. In reality, a lot of the colors can be made with just those colors she's mentioning. You can vary it, and I use an ultramarine blue versus what she's using. But again, it's kind of, you get different feel for the paint. And I use a different red than she's using. She used Cad Red, which is kind of that nice solid red. Purely Red is another red, very similar to Cad Red. I also use a Quin Red, so different philosophies of paint mixing by artists. So
mixed in with the oil paint itself, you should be just fine, unless you let the paint dry and then sand the surface and set those particles loose again, in which case, sure, that can be toxic again. But again, only if it's a powder. Those same pigments can be...
So she's talking about the dangers of pigments. Some of the pigments, especially cadmium, are very dangerous. It's cancer causing. If you use it in the tube paint, it's not, because it's already mixed with that gel and it tends to stay on the surface and on your brush, as long as you're not sticking your brush in your mouth, right? Don't eat the paint, guys. But yeah, if you have any of those dangerous paints, some of them are dangerous, like Cad Red. There's a few paints that are not good for you. Lead white. Lead white usually isn't made anymore because it obviously has lead in it, but it makes really beautiful color. So if you use those colors in either acrylic or oil, as she's suggesting, you won't have an issue as long as you don't sand the surface and that paint gets in the air and you sniff it. So that's the danger of using raw pigment. I've used raw pigment myself. You have to be very careful with it and blend it into the thing, and then you can take a deep breath, right? But wait until it's all mixed in.
Which is a carcinogen, according to the National Cancer Institute. Personally, acrylic dries much too fast for me. I like to take my time with mixing colors, and with acrylics, it's literally drying as I'm working on my palette. Like, I'm mixing colors and the paint's already drying, that doesn't work for me. The only
So yeah, one of the challenges, if you want to do these fine details that she's really painting, it's really not super easy in acrylic, because acrylic dries in 15 minutes versus oil. You can leave it on. You can work with it a couple of days. So if you're doing a painting and you want to do wet on wet, you can keep going for like a day or two and be mixing those. I know a lot of my oil painter friends, they'll actually take like a good hour, mix their palette exactly how they want to get the right colors, all the shades they want, and have those just pre-mixed and then paint from that. So they already have kind of the colors they want to use in the painting. They've already kind of got the shades right, the chroma up and down how they want, the gray levels in there. And so that's really one of the powers of oil painting, is you have a really subtle control on the color itself. Versus acrylic, you're painting really fast, or you're doing layers. Some days I miss oil for that aspect, but in general, I disagree. But if you want to paint subtle detail, it's easier in oil, as she says.
Potentially toxic component to oil painting isn't even the oil paint itself. It's the mediums that can contain solvents or petroleum distillates and other chemicals. Just make sure you paint in a well-ventilated...
So yeah, all the solvents, turpentine and other ones that you would use in oil paints are toxic to you, so don't obviously have a fan in your studio. That totally makes sense. I have a fan going in my acrylic studio, but acrylic is a little bit safer in that aspect because you're only mixing with water primarily. So there is no solvents. It's just water and soap, right? And it's just what you use on your hands with Dawn liquid soap. So it's a little bit safer in my perspective. But yeah, let's continue on. So in this particular video,
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me for Sketchbook Sunday, episode 56. I'm working with gouache today in my Moleskine sketchbook. I'm using the Royal & Langnickel gouache, which
which is student grade. And
so here she's talking about a painting, but at the same time talking back and forth with the artist about artist philosophies, and in this particular case about how to handle criticism.
And relatively inexpensive, but I'm super new to this medium and I didn't know if I would like it, so I didn't want to spend money on expensive professional action and answering them in a video. On my last video, I got this comment from Nina, who wrote, "Could you talk about art criticism online? How do you handle the toxic people, and how do you tell them apart from the people who are genuinely trying to help?" So firstly, I guess the biggest thing is someone who is genuinely trying to help you will typically also not try to insult you directly in the process of them delivering help. Anyone can have an opinion on your work, and everyone will. Some of it will be good and some of it won't. It's kind of inevitable. You don't have to.
So yeah, as an artist, you put yourself out there in public, so it's inevitable any random Joe going to an art fair shows up and be like, hey, that isn't painting, or why is that art, or they'll start touching your painting if they're little kids or something. So you're going to run into critics if you're an artist at all. So it's just the nature of the beast. And she kind of gives you just a little bit of feedback while she's painting this painting, which I kind of like. You're doing a painting demonstration at the same time you're walking through a topic. So that's kind of one of her art topics. Let's go to the next video. So this one's a little dated, but I'll just play it anyway.
Specifics. It's kind of funny because one of the most common received comments that I get from people in real life who don't really know a whole lot about social media or art, a lot of them say, wow, you were born in the wrong era. If only you were born in the 1700s or 60s.
So this is one of the funny things of, since she's a realist, you know, she's running to customers like, oh, you're in the wrong decade, it's all modern art now. But it's actually easier to sell with social media and the modern tools versus how you used to have to go through the gallery system or have patrons, and if you fell out of favor with the patrons, you end up being an ordinary craftsman making leather belts or something, right? So yeah, this is kind of a funny commentary.
1600s, when painting was the only way to share images. Now we have cameras and photos, and who cares about paintings, right? Something along those lines. That's not a direct quote. It's kind of like, for me, that's never been the main focus, and if I ever put it as the main focus, it never truly brought me any long-term satisfaction or happiness.
So you can also tell this earlier video because she doesn't have any music overlay. In her later videos, she always uses music. I use a lot of music in my videos. It makes it give it that little special touch. She has this kind of fairy, dreamlike quality to the music, which goes around with her style. You know, she does women in water, which is very popular. Obviously, men and women like to collect that. And, you know, just the dreamy quality to her work, which is what she's popular for.
Not like a Facebook page where people can add you, but like a Facebook page that people can like. Because with Facebook friend pages where people can actually add you as a friend, you're limited to like 4,000 people, I think. And at that point, you know, you're kind of stuck. And yeah, people can follow you on that page, but it's different. It's just better to have your Facebook brand page where people can click like, you can post all your content, sync your Instagram with it, post things.
So yeah, she's talking the differences between the Facebook profile and the Facebook fan page. I didn't understand it myself recently, so she was, you know, pretty smart. She figured out 3 years ago how it worked. I had one, but I was like, what's the difference? I just post the same material. But there are very major differences. So this video is still pretty relevant. It needs a little bit updating because Facebook has changed quite a lot since then. So the impact is different than it once was. It was once more powerful as it was new and expanding, and they just kind of let all the stuff flow kind of naturally. Now they kind of, I think they gear it more towards your top 25 followers, so you don't really get the huge fan base. You end up having to do a lot of paid promotions. But yeah, it's a pretty good video on the social media impact of Lena Danya. And she's based somewhere in Florida, on the coast, obviously. I think she's moving maybe to Oregon or something. But yeah, she is a really spectacular artist. I would highly recommend, especially for if you want to see how to do water, especially. She's pretty good at, obviously, the portrait, but especially the water. She just nails it with the water. And doing that, you know, high photorealism, she's a really good artist. And the way she puts her video together, especially the newer ones, are really spectacular. A lot of beauty, precision. She has a really extremely clean studio somehow. I don't know how. To me, it just seems unrealistic. Like, how do you not have paint splatter? Like, I've never seen a clean studio in reality, right? So I'm like, but she presents herself that way, you know, I don't know. It just seems a little fake to me on that aspect, but that's a small, tiny criticism. In general, she's an awesome painter, obviously. And she has a lot of good material, 300 or so videos, so a lot of different painting videos. I think she does it about once a week. She used to do it twice a week, so she's kind of slowed down a little bit. Probably due to the pandemic, everyone kind of got worn out. I mean, there's only so much reach you get after a while anyway. And she has millions of views on her videos, so does she need to make a lot of videos still? Probably not. Anyway, that's my take on Lena Danya. And go watch her. And check out my channel as well, hopefully. Thanks, guys.